Montreal Canadiens general manager Kent Hughes says he only has one number one goalie in the organization, Carey Price. What does that mean for Jake Allen? What does that mean for Samuel Montembeault? What does that mean for Caden Primo? If Price doesn't play this year, do the Canadiens go out and acquire a number one goalie? If so, who's that goalie, or who are those goalies that they should be looking at? And Price's future with the Montreal Canadiens, does it rely on another player moving first or another player staying first? We'll tackle all of that. Ryan Sporer of the Hockey Writers joins me on the Sick Podcast. I'm Marinaro.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro. The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup.
Sports entertainment like no other. Brought to you by 8.6 Beer, intense by nature, and La Cage. If the last time you went to La Cage was when the Habs won the Cup, it's time you went back to La Cage. The menu will surprise you.
I'm Marinaro. It's the Sick Podcast, and yes, brought to you by 8.6 Beer, intense by nature. The beer for those who follow their instinct and live their passions in order to make their mark, and La Cage. La Cage LaSalle. I've been there many times. Been to La Cage de Carey. On my way this week to La Cage Ville Saint Laurent. Already visited La Cage at the Bell Center. It's my mission to visit as many La Cage restaurants as possible in summer of 2022. So if the last time you went was when the Habs won the Cup, the menu will surprise you because it has since been revamped, and their restaurants are looking, they're just beautiful. All right, by the way, we're going to be there on Saturday, May 21st, and celebrate our 1-year anniversary of the Sick Podcast. It was supposed to happen a couple of months ago in terms of the anniversary, but of course, because of COVID, we put it off a little bit, and then we're supposed to have it in April. And some of our team actually, unfortunately, came down with COVID, but all's well now. And so we postponed that event. So it's going to take place on Saturday, May 21st, and this event is going to take place at La Cage de Carey. So if you want to RSVP, you should give them a phone call, and you can do so. Joining me to talk about Carey Price after Kent Hughes says he's the only number one goalie the Canadiens have in the organization. What does that mean for the other goalies? And what if he can't play? Or what if he can play, but he can't play too many games? Who should the Canadiens target to be their next number one? I bring in Ryan Sporer of the Hockey Writers. Welcome to the program for the very first time. I hope it's one of many. How are you? We're the first of many.
I hope so too, and I'm doing good. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Very good. Wow. If you and I were on the same line, I would be the power forward and you would be the skill player. Look how big my shoulders are in contrast to yours. Actually, not really. Okay. I don't know if you're on your tablet or your computer or your phone, but if you actually tilt it up, you'll be able to get to pretty much my level. See? There you go. A little bit more. Perfect. Good. Fantastic. Stay like that. Now I don't look like Andre the Giant. Yeah, look, you look just as big as me. Perfect. It's really good, Ryan. It's all good. So, hey, I read your piece in the Hockey Writers. You are a freelance writer, and awesome work, by the way. Really, very much enjoyed it. You talked about pretty much the future of Carey Price. So talk to us about the future of Carey Price and what it relies on, really, with the, besides his health, which is the obvious answer.
Well, I mean, he during the press media availabilities, postmortem availabilities, he had said that he is unsure of his future and that he didn't really get any answers from the doctors his last time around. So that was obviously disconcerting. And Kent Hughes, the general manager, obviously said that he had said that with regard to a question about cap flexibility in the offseason, that it depends on a variety of factors. And he cited, Jeff Petrie. If Jeff Petrie gets traded, that's $6.25 million extra in theory. And if Price goes on LTIR, Shea Weber style, for example, that would, give the Canadiens additional breathing room to the tune of $10.5 million. So that's how the Canadiens are in limbo right now. Price is kind of a linchpin with regard to their.
Well, if memory serves me well, Petrie is 6.25, but Weber is 7.857, correct?
And a bunch of other numbers after that, yeah.
Yeah. All right, okay. So, but we do already, even though Carey Price doesn't have all his answers, we do have some of them. And the answers that we do have are, he played 5 games in the regular season. 2 of them were, nothing he can do in the first 2 losses. Loss number 3 and loss number 4, he was not very good. The Canadiens gave up 12 goals in those games. He did win his first game of the season in the final game of the regular season versus the Florida Panthers team that pretty much sat half their team. He did say that he was in pain. He was in some discomfort. It would not be sustainable. He does not see himself playing 55 games, feeling the way he's feeling. So we know he can't play 55. There's the possibility of another surgery. That's not off the table. He's going to go get a second opinion. Usually you go get a second opinion if you don't like that the first doctor is telling you that you're going to need another surgery, which he probably does. But what if Carey Price can play 35? Is there anything the Canadiens can do? Because obviously you don't want a goalie getting paid $10.5 million to play 35 games. But at the same time, Ryan, if you're another team in the league and Carey Price turns 35 in August and he only played 5 games last year and he wasn't overly convincing, he's got concerns about his knee. He might need another surgery. He's not getting younger. He's not getting better. Doesn't know how much hockey has left in him. He didn't rule out that this could have been his very last game. Do you go after Carey Price? I think asking the question is answering it, right?
Yeah, I think he gave the answer for me. Thanks a lot. That's awesome. Yeah, in my opinion, there's no way any team, self-respecting team, takes on Carey Price's contract. It just makes no sense, and that's in no shape or form a sign of show of disrespect towards Price. It's just the circumstances. He's 30. He's going to be 35.
Yep.
Knee issues, obviously. Plus, he has a no trade clause, so he would have
no movement clause. No movement. Yeah.
So, and he's got on record as saying that he hasn't envisioned himself playing for any other team. I say that, of course, and he did, make himself available at the expansion draft. But now, most recently,
it's the right thing to say. You're not going to say, I see myself playing with another team. It's the right thing to say. For those who are watching, and you can watch us, of course, on Facebook at The Sick Podcast and on Twitter at The Sick Podcast. Some of our clips are there, especially when we go live. You can find this there. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel as well and follow us there. Once we upload an episode or we go live, you will be notified. And so on all social media platforms. But so talk to me about Jeff Petrie and if the Canadiens are able to move Jeff Petrie, if they're able to get rid of his contract, what they can do. And talk to me about LTIR for Carey Price, and if they're able to put him on LTIR, how that impacts their salary cap going forward.
Well, if they are able to put Price on LTIR, they're gaining $10.5 million in cap space, with which they would probably go use to pursue a goalie as a replacement. So you've got, in my mind, 3 top options via free agency: Darcy Kemper of the Colorado Avalanche, Jack Campbell of Toronto Maple Leafs, and Ville Husso of the St. Louis Blues, who's technically a backup, I suppose, to Jordan Binnington, but has so vastly outplayed him that, he's the star of the show. But, of course, the Blues signed Jordan Binnington to a 6-year, $36 million deal last year, so they're kind of stuck with the guy unless they can cajole some team to take on his contract.
Which goalie, if they need a number 1 goalie and they go out and those are the guys that are available, which one makes the most sense and why? It almost sounds like it's Husso. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Husso is the youngest of the bunch at 27, if memory serves. But he also has the smallest sample size of success, shall we say. I don't believe it would be a risky proposition, but I feel as though it would be a similar situation to what the Arizona Coyotes did acquiring Antti Ranta from the New York Rangers a few years ago. Obviously, Antti Ranta is now with the Carolina Hurricanes, but for a while he had been a backup, went to the Arizona Coyotes, served as their number one goalie. So he made the transition from backup to goalie. And the Canadiens, if that's kind of the model of what the Canadiens are looking for, Husso would probably command somewhere in the neighborhood of 4.55, because that's around what Ranta made a few years ago.
And Kemper?
I'm of the opinion that he might not even make it to market, to be honest, just because, who are the Colorado Avalanche going to pursue? Like, he's proven that he's a good fit with the Avalanche. And, I feel as though they're probably just going to try and re-sign him and give him a blank check for all intents and purposes. He's 32, so he's not old. And, he's entitled to, his big payday, I think.
Any other option you were saying?
Yeah, Jack Campbell of the Maple Leafs. But again, if you're the Maple Leafs, similar to with Kemper and the Colorado Avalanche, you're probably trying to lock him up. The issue with the Maple Leafs is you probably have to trade someone because you're right up at the cap, if not over it at this point. But obviously goaltending is a critical position, as Canadiens fans can attest to. So I'm sure Kyle Dubas will be looking to try and retain Campbell at all costs, and that might be making a trade.
All right, you heard it from Ryan Sporer. Betway, for the love of the game, sign up and deposit on Betway for a 100% deposit bonus. The easiest sports book for Canadians. E-transfers are accepted just like that. So if the Canadians go out and they acquire a goalie, Ville Husso of the St. Louis Blues might be your best bet, and you can place it on Betway. All right, okay. So then there's another option, and this is where I'm leaning. You want to hear it?
Please.
I'm so happy you said that, or else the podcast would have been over already.
Did I have an option? I mean,
I want Connor Bedard. I don't want the Canadiens to get better in goal next year. I don't want the Canadiens to go out and sign an unrestricted free agent goalie. I don't want the Canadiens to go out and sign an unrestricted free agent number one defenseman. I don't want the Canadiens to go out and sign a top line unrestricted free agent forward. Connor Bedard is a generational talent, and I get it. It's not because you can finish last that you're guaranteed the number one pick overall. You do have the highest probability. Michkov is a generational talent. According to some, Fantilli might be better than the player that's probably going to go number one this year. And by the way, Central Scouting came out with their list, and they have Shane Wright at number one. So, how do you acquire a generational talent if you're not going to draft him at number one or number two overall? So I'm hoping Carey Price comes back. If he wants to play 30, he plays 30. I'm hoping the Canadiens don't improve the team all that much. I think they're handcuffed with certain contracts. This is what I think is what's best for the organization. Now, there's people that are listening and people that are watching that are saying, no, we can't have another year like this year. But what if you do and you get Connor Bedard? Could you imagine how fun the next 10 years are going to be? Ryan?
I mean, I personally like to see it. I'm not so sure Kent Hughes and Jeff Molson and Jeff Gordon would like to see it. Reports have indicated they're looking to be aggressive during free agency. I don't know how accurate those reports are, but I mean, Pierre Lebrun of TSN, so take it with a grain of, well, he's fairly reputable.
Very reputable. Reputable. Yeah, no.
So I would have to imagine that, Jeff Molson took one look at the standings, from the start of the season to now and, going downward and realized that, maybe this isn't so much fun for the fans and me and my, the books.
But what's one more year of suffering if it's going to mean 10 years of joy?
Oh, I'm not disputing that.
I hear you. And that's, if Jeff is watching, Jeff, please, Let's all in for Connor Bedard here. Let's go. All right, okay. Marinero, shop all your sports license apparel, lifestyle apparel, including hoodies, caps, T-shirts of your favorite teams from all major leagues. So as well as those UFAs that we talked about, once they sign on with a team, you can go out and buy their jersey. And our Sick merchandise. Take a look at this sweatshirt that says Sick in big, bold letters. You can pick it up at sportbuffshop.com. Use code SICK15 for 15% off on all of their items. All right, okay. Kent Hughes says the Canadiens have one number one goalie in the organization. His name is Carey Price. You've had a chance to watch Jake Allen over the past couple of years as a Montreal Canadian. You think what?
I think he's come as advertised. It's no secret that he struggled in the number one role with the St. Louis Blues when he had it a few years back, and he only really thrived in a 1B role. And I think that's what the Canadiens got in him, a 1B goalie who can, step in a pinch. He's not a number 1A by any stretch, but he's performed sufficiently well covering for Price in his injuries over the last 2 years. I think his mediocre stat line is more a reflection of the team in front of him than anything else. But if I'm the Canadiens, I'm comfortable going forward with Jake Allen. As long as Carey Price is the 1A and he's the 1B.
Actually, down the stretch, he got hurt, of course, and his agent came out and said Jake played too much. Yeah. So if Carey can only play 22 or 32 going forward, not so sure Jake is comfortable with playing 50 or 52 or more than that. So there's something. So having said that, let's just say Price comes back.
Yeah.
Fix his knee. Everything's good. Swelling goes away. Inflammation goes away. He bounces back. He's great. Jake Allen still your backup, or would you go with a younger Samuel Montembeault? Jake Allen is under contract. I mean,
assuming Price is completely healthy, I would still go with Jake Allen, just because Price is 35, and he even if he is completely healthy, he's 5, and he's proven that he needs the rest. So you go with the 1B, and that's assuming, of course, that you're trying to win and make the playoffs, which is what all signs are pointing to. I don't think Samuel Montembeault. I think Montembeault rose to the challenge and proved that he proved a lot this year.
He fought.
He sometimes, he just, in my opinion, is a third string goalie, which is what he was billed as when the Canes acquired him via waivers. I don't think he's anything more than that, all due respect to him.
All right. So now the big question, because yes, Caden Primo was drafted in the 7th round, and yes, it was 199th overall several years ago, but he had so much success at Northeastern. He had so much success with Team USA. There's a lot of us, and I'll include myself. I thought I was at the time the president of the Caden Primo fan club that thought this kid could be the steal of the draft. He could end up being a gem. A couple of years into his pro career, Caden Primo was not as impressive this year as he was a year ago. Are you concerned?
Well, I mean, I think saying that he wasn't as impressive is kind of sugarcoating it a bit. He was pretty bad. I think he was pulled like 5 times, and that was just, he was thrown to the wolves. Let's not kid ourselves.
Yeah.
But to a certain extent, the Canadiens couldn't help it just because of the injury situation in net. So I understand to some degree, but also it didn't do Primo any favors with regard to his development, and I don't blame him in the least. Stefan Waite, the ex-goalie coach of the Canadiens, said that ideally he'd be getting 200 AHL games in before he was ready for the NHL. He hasn't even reached 100 yet. So he definitely needs more seasoning before anyone can really assess his situation, in my opinion. But I agree, it's unfortunately not looking good right now.
All right, okay. So how do you think things are going to shake out at the goalie position within the organization as far as next season is concerned? And if you could, and you had some kind of magical power, how would you want it to shake out?
If I had some kind of magical power, I'd probably, I hate to say it, but
hold on a second. Hold that thought. I'm going to give you a comment. You ready?
Sure.
I think it would be best for both parties that the Montreal Canadiens and Carey Price move on from each other. Your thoughts?
I was just going to say, I think it would be for the best if the Canadiens were rid of that contract. And
yeah,
I just don't see it happening via trade. I think Price would have to retire or, like, of course, go on LTIR. But I bid him a good retirement. I think he's done the organization proud, all of his accomplishments, leading the team to the Stanley Cup final last season. I think he'll go down in history as one of the top 4 Canadiens goalies of all time. And that's
no one will probably admit it, Ryan. It's just out of respect. You don't want to, but it's probably what everyone wants. And think about Carey's career, right? 15 years as the goalie of the Montreal Canadiens must feel like a 26-year career somewhere else in the National Hockey League. It must be incredibly draining. It must be incredibly exhausting. He talked about, a couple of years ago that he doesn't go out to do groceries anymore and stuff like that. He stays locked in his house. It must be very, very difficult. We know that he entered the NHL Player Assistance Program at the beginning of the season. We know he's had several injuries, several disappointments. He went to a couple of conference finals. He went to the Stanley Cup final last year. They lost in 5. They were very much demoralized, but he's made all the money in the world. He's had a 15-year career. He's played more games than who knows how many goalies in the history of the National Hockey League. He's won more games than most, and the Canadiens are not at a point where they're going to win now or be a Stanley Cup contender now. They'd love to probably get that 10.5 off the cap, like you mentioned. It's probably what both parties want, but no one will admit it.
I think it's what the Canadiens want, and I can't say for sure about Price, but judging by what Hughes's post-mortem press availability, what he said, just going on record talking about how the 10.5 million off the books would give them additional cap flexibility. I mean, that's kind of a telling thing to say if you're the Montreal Canadiens.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I wrote in the piece. If Carey Price is one of the top goalies in franchise history at this point.
Yeah.
If there is a realistic chance that he can come back, you kind of give him every opportunity in the world to do so.
Mm-hmm.
You place kind of a moratorium on any talk to the contrary, and clearly that's not the case.
And if he can't come back, and this is it for Carey Price, how do the Canadiens honor his career? You know what I'm getting at. Yes or no to 31 in the rafters. Everyone has an opinion on this one. I'd like to hear yours.
I think he's ultimately going to get retired. He is the franchise leader in wins. So on that basis alone, for sure. I honestly don't see it not happening.
I don't see it happening anytime soon. Steve Schutt's 22 and Jacques Lemaire's 25 have not been retired. That's a lot of goals. That's a lot of assists. That's a lot of points. And that is a lot of Stanley Cups. Did they have a great team compared to Carey Price? Yes. But, hockey's not fair sometimes. You might not have a great team, but you still have to go out and win that Stanley Cup. And they weren't able to do so with Carey Price. Not saying that it's on him, but they just weren't. And that's, if you don't win a Stanley Cup, your jersey's going to get retired in Montreal for another team. Yes. Carey Price plays for another team in the National Hockey League. They're retiring his jersey. He plays for Colorado. They're retiring it. He plays for, Winnipeg. They're retiring his jersey. He plays for, you name it. Ottawa. They're retiring his jersey. Plays for the Montreal Canadiens. Not so sure, Ryan.
I mean, I see your point, no doubt. And I agree it's going to be a while for sure.
I'm all about good points, by the way. I'm not just about looks. I'm not just a pretty face,
Well, now I know. Thanks for having me on again.
Thanks for doing this, and I'll get you on again. Ryan, why don't you tell people where they can go out and read your articles, because you write specifically on the Montreal Canadiens for the Hockey Writers.
Yeah, so you can find me on the Hockey Writers page, on the Hockey Writers on the Montreal Canadiens page. I write every few days, so you can find my postings there. And on Twitter, you can follow me at rsporer. So RSZPORER. That's where you can find me.
And that's where they can read your articles. You're going to be on again, so they're going to get used to you. Thanks for doing this, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right, there you have it. Ryan Sporer, Marinaro, the Sick Podcast. Follow us on all social media platforms, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and of course, subscribe to our YouTube page at the Sick Podcast. Marinaro.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by 8.6, Intense by Nature, and La Cage. If the last time you went to La Cage was when the Habs won the cup, it's time you went back to La Cage. The menu will surprise you.